Hello again. We are talking about migration. This is the second lecture in week 6, third video. And let's talk about push factors and pull factors. You heard these terms in one of the documentaries I asked you to watch in week 5. And now let's get some understanding and incorporate some previous vocabulary into our understanding of what these things mean. So, migration is a phenomenon that we see really explode with the Industrial Revolution. And you have learned that, of course, people left the rural areas to the urban areas because that's where the jobs were. Well, just in that sentence, we've got a couple of different things that we can analyze between what is a push factor and what is a pull factor. So these things have to do with the reasons behind why people exit the place where they originally were, and when they're choosing on where to go, there can be a variety of reasons why you might choose to go someplace. But the pull factors that different destinations have are the reasons why people decide to go into, or why immigration occurs in the place that they ultimately end up with. Now, there might be many different considerations because there's probably a lot of different places that have an attraction to individuals as they are choosing where to go into, the immigration with an I, when they decide to exit their original place. Okay, so push factors and pull factors. Now, one of the things that I want to point out here as you're taking your notes, you should be consistently seeing the flow of our topics one to the next. But when I gave you the definition of immigration and immigration in a previous lecture, I used the word country because sometimes people might want to leave one country. I'm using that as like a geopolitical term, like France to Spain are two different countries. However, that's not the only way immigration takes place. You can immigrate, you can decide to exit the South, for instance, and go into the North, for instance, which is what happened so often after the Emancipation Proclamation. You saw a lot of African Americans who had been unwillingly deposited in the New World anyway after a forced migration that took place during what we call the African diaspora that was really linked to agriculture and surplus production and the social inequality that occurs because of land ownership. Major problems happen in social justice issues having to do with ownership and that kind of economic system that agriculture, surplus agriculture, promoted in the world. But the push factors from the South were, of course, oppression, were, of course, lack of opportunities, violence, death, terrible mistreatment at the hands of local governments or local law enforcement. And so there is a favorite American novel of mine for those of you who are avid readers, or if you get to choose a book to examine in one of your literature classes. Richard Wright is a famous author, and he wrote a novel called Black Boy. And he chronicles, it's not entirely autobiographical, but he chronicles his own life experiences because he was an immigrant with an E. He exited many places in his life, and he had pull factors to go to into many other places in his life. So, for instance, he was born into extreme poverty in rural Mississippi. I'm from Mississippi. One of the reasons maybe I like this novel so much. So he was born in rural Mississippi, and he describes his terrible living conditions, the economic problems, the political oppression, that kind of thing that he remembers as an adult. Looking back, he realizes that that's what his experience was. So his family goes to great pains to go to Jackson, Mississippi, because at least in that urban area, there might be better treatment, better economic opportunities. There's the word I was looking for. So those are the reasons why that place was particularly attractive. However, as the novel chronicles, Jackson, Mississippi is still Mississippi, y'all. So he did not have the kind of life uplift, the social uplift that he had been looking for in Jackson, Mississippi. And so Memphis called his name. Memphis was attractive because it was on the Mississippi River. There was more transportation. Look at all of the Mr. Help topics that we're covering in this little synopsis of his book. And Memphis for a while offered him greater education experiences. There's some of the pull factors: greater education, greater job opportunities, greater social networks, greater political voice and opportunities. And from Memphis, Chicago called his name. And so you can see this internal migration that occurred within his lifetime. And it wasn't from one country to the next. It was from one political, social, economic, life experience, life opportunity location to the next. And so push factors and pull factors can be, a very wide variety of things, whether they are because of cyclical migration, like perhaps you're in the community college right now, but you intend to transfer to another school, some other time and place. Let's say you culinary students are going to transfer to the Sorbonne for a little while. And so you have a plan to move cyclically to Paris for a little while, study and further your culinary education, or maybe the CIA in New York, the Culinary Institute of America in New York, for instance. So you have this plan. That place is particularly attractive because it can further your career. It gives you prestige. It gives you kind of a leg up over the competition for other jobs that you might want. I know that there's many, many opportunities worldwide. I think some of the culinary school graduates have gone to work in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates. An emirate is like a state. So if we say United States of America, United Arab Emirates, the Emirates are like states of Arabia. So I know that we've had several of our students go and work at some of those international, fabulously exclusive and luxurious resorts overseas. And it's not necessarily a permanent move for them, but what a life experience that they want that makes that move attractive. Okay, so those are the kinds of opportunities and those are the kinds of reasons that in our modern world that we might have a push or a pull factor for our migration patterns. But early on in this Industrial Revolution thing, you saw people moving for very food-oriented and job-oriented reasons. War is another reason why people might move out of a place. Political oppression. In my gender studies class, we look at countries in Africa, for instance, that have homosexuality completely illegal and punishable by death in their legal systems. No kidding. And so this is a reason why, perhaps because of your cultural identity, there might be a push factor to get you out of this place into a place where your cultural identity is not oppressed to the point of death and legal punishment. So there's a whole lot of different reasons for push and pull factors, whether it's cyclical migration, like we mentioned in a previous lecture. Perhaps I'm going to Florida for these particular times of the year because that's when the harvest of oranges takes place, and I'm going to work at oranges first, and then I'm going to go do artichokes in California, and then wherever else I go for the hand agricultural labor that's still required this day and age. So lots of different push and pull factors. Maybe you have a family story that you could analyze based on the migration that your family started here and went there, and why. And you can analyze it not just in terms of, what you think you know about it, but go talk to grandma and grandpa, go talk to mom and dad, to find out, why did you put me here? Or, figure out your own family's personal push and pull factors, or take a textbook, or not a textbook, a novel like I described to you, and use that as an outside source to examine what the characters in the novel did. The Grapes of Wrath would be a great one because we're actually going to talk about the Dust Bowl in the Midwest and the Great Depression and all that kind of stuff in this class too. So perhaps you can teach yourself all of these words, review all of these words from these first two lectures, and teach yourself about push and pull factors by examining either your own life story or a movie or a book that you like. There's a good idea, I think it's a good idea, for a reaction paper this week. If you're going to do one, text me with questions. More soon. Bye.